Professor Godfred Bokwin joins us. He's an economist. He's at the University of Ghana. He's no stranger to our show, and we're happy to have him this morning. Prof, good morning.
Yes, good morning, Radio, and good morning to our cherished listeners and your co-host.
Yeah, so, Prof, here's the truth. In spite of all of the wonderful performance of the city, things are still expensive in Ghana. The household is yet to feel any measurable sense of relief. Then here we go with an extra CD per liter. What do you say to those who say that the government has basically taken away with one hand and given with one hand and taken away with the other?
Good morning once again. Yes, to some extent, but not in a direct relationship. I think I have said this before, that there are painful decisions ahead of us, especially in the energy sector. If you look at the 2025 budget, you look at the steep expenditure cuts, and then again, the many reforms under the IMF-supported program, we face a considerable challenge navigating a path towards progressive spending without undermining the stability we are seeing right now. Once the strengthening of the currency is not based on transformation of the economy, from structural transformation and productivity transformation, you always have to be very careful how the future looks like. Under the circumstance, I have a soft side towards this imposition, largely also because of the gains that have been conferred, especially in the export pricing formula, given the strengthening of the local currency. So to that extent, we can make a case for this levy. My considered view is that it's not supposed to be a permanent levy. It should be possible for the government to come back to the people of Ghana, to Parliament, and say that, look, we've seen the currency weakening. We have done the analysis. The pass-through will be felt strongly by consumers, and therefore we want to take this out. But under the circumstance, given the conferred advantage that has been created as a result of the strengthening of the currency, this imposition would not impact consumers significantly, while it also allows the government to make some fiscal gains to resolve the energy sector. There are reforms that could be introduced, and some of them are being worked on as part of the IMF-supported program and all of that. They will bear fruit, not in the immediate, but I think that we needed something urgently to also assure our investors that we have a repayment capacity, so that if you are asking for private sector investment, the restructuring of the energy sector, even if you are asking private sector participation, we have to be able to assure investors that our repayment capacity is strong for them to be able to take on that risk on their balance sheet.
But
so
Prof,
that's where I come from.
If I may, you said this will not impact consumers significantly, but should consumers be impacted in any way? We've had the ESLA running for years. We know the challenges with our energy sector. Why are we not solving those challenges and leaving consumers to enjoy whatever breathing space the current macroeconomic space is giving us?
I agree with you totally. And I think that my support for this is not to take away the fact that we must demand accountability and reform from government along these lines, including the utilization of these levies. But as a low-hanging fruit in the midst of crisis, as we want to roll out 24-hour economy and all of that, something has to give in the immediate. We know that in Ghana, and I agree with you, that the consumer is almost the residual risk claimant It's like a punching bag, more or less. Worst case scenario, in challenging times, we pass it on to them. When the gains arrive, then we try to find a way not to ensure that they enjoy the full benefit of the gain and all of that. But I think that under the circumstance, and also given that at least now we've seen leadership, we've seen sacrifice from the president himself, the office of the president. We've seen sacrifice from across ministries, ministers in the steep expenditure cut, what we will call wasteful spending. Whilst government is also on track when it comes to social services, district assembly common fund, get fund, national health insurance, and the rest of them. We cannot continue like this. And I've said this on your network, that we cannot continue to operate the 2025 budget in 2026, 2027, and the rest of them. Government will have to begin to spend progressively. We have huge infrastructure deficit. Once you've not been able to resolve your energy sector, the uncertainty in there itself will not encourage foreign direct investment portfolio flows into your economy and all of that. Yes, so the argument you've made, I agree with you. But I'm just looking at it that from a more progressive point of view, should we say no to this? Of course, it's been passed. Should we resist it? What are we losing? What is the trade-off and the rest of them? Then again, given that we have aggressive strengthening of the currency, bear in mind, it's not all positive. Some businesses have booked losses, huge, and all of that.
Right.
Whilst from the macro point of view, especially from the perspective of government balance sheet, they are accounting for gains because our debt to GDP ratio, if you market to market from the external debt point of view, we are going to have a lower debt to GDP ratio by the end of the year. We are likely to even outperform the IMF target by middle of next year or first quarter of next year as the final review kicks in and all of that. Then again, debt servicing will be a bit cheaper from the external point of view and all of that. But there are equally costs to the aggressive strengthening. So it's all about striking the balance. And I've said before that the central bank should be communicating to stakeholders, because monetary policy regulation is not just for the central bank to be happy about that, but it's also for stakeholders and how we are able to carry the expectations of stakeholders along.
In fact, we will come back a bit more to monetary policy in a moment, because I have a question about that. But we've been joined by the Energy John Jinapo. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Well, so here we are. A levy has been imposed to help clean up the debts in your sector. Now, we know what is causing the debts in your sector, and we know how much of it is caused by inefficiency. But here we are imposing a tax on families, households, individuals, and it's quite a significant one. I just did a calculation. A Toyota Corolla has 50 liters capacity. So from now on, every time someone fills up the tank of their Toyota Corolla, it's going to cost them 50 Ghana cedis extra. That's not insignificant. How, as the minister of the sector where the problem is, how do you justify this imposition on the Ghanaian people?
Good morning, and thank you. You can forgive me if my voice is hoarse. I think it's from yesterday's activity. Governance is about taking decisions. It's about optimizing the situation and doing what we believe is the best decision. Nobody enjoys imposing taxes or levies on the people of Ghana. We've been working very hard since assuming office. But quickly, this is not actually to pay for legacy debt. What we are doing is that we've studied the system, we've done the analysis in the energy sector, and the basic truth and fact is that the liquid fuels that we buy currently is not part of the tariff structure. And so when you and I pay for electricity, even if ECG were to collect the money 100% today, none of that money would go into the procurement of liquid fuels. Meanwhile, we require over $1 billion this year alone to procure liquid fuels, because we should have increased gas consumption or production years ago, it takes on average about 18 months to 2 years to put the gas infrastructure in place. That is even if you start today. And so this should have happened like yesterday. Finance Minister has been helping a bit, though with much difficulty in helping us to procure liquid fuel. And so what are the options available? Increase electricity tariffs, fall on the Finance Minister for non-existing money, or share the gains in the reduction of fuel prices. Bear in mind, when we took over, fuel was about 16 cedi. And so even with this 1 cedi, even as I agree with you that you will pay some 50 cedi extra, you will be saving 100 cedi extra or 150 cedi extra as compared to when we took office. And so yes, we would have wished to pass all the gains to Ghanaians. And that means that you would have to pay about 40 to 50% more in your electricity tariff situation. But governance is a balancing act. And that is why we are appealing to Ghanaians that will give you a reduction already from the 16 to about 13, which is about 3 cedi reduction. So that at 13 or 12, we can also use 1 cedi to sustain electricity for productivity. Whilst we take steps to increase gas consumption, reduce the losses, bring about efficiency. And already we are putting in place mechanisms that showing that in the electricity sector we are seeing some positive results. Over the past few weeks, the electricity situation is stabilized largely. And if you talk to the IPPs, their payments as compared to the previous year has increased by about 70%. The losses are going down. ECG is now very disciplined when it comes to expenditure. Government and cabinet has passed a decision that all MMDs, aside the critical ones, should pay directly through prepayment meter. And even the critical ones, Ministry of Finance should budget and pay for. But it's a process. This is an interim arrangement. Let's all help government so that together we can turn the electricity sector around. We still have a debt of about 65 billion.
Honorable Minister,
which has to be paid.
How interim will this arrangement be? How long is it going to last?
So for this amount covers about 60% of our fuel bills when it comes to liquid fuel. Our objective is that by the end of the year, we should increase gas consumption significantly. And so we are working with the Jubilee partners to increase gas next month. We are also working with ENI to increase gas in August. We are working with NGAS to increase gas from NGAS this month. And then we are working on the LNG facility. And so we would observe the situation as a government. And government is about decision making. We believe that given the situation and given the enormity of the challenge and the situation we find ourselves, let's take this decision whilst we make progress.
So do we have a model? Do we have a model at least to tell us that we will pay this particular levy for the next 1 year or 2 years, so that we prepare our minds and our personal finances to deal with this?
The finance minister and myself have done a lot of modeling. Even this year, what it means is that the finance minister will have to support us with about 4 billion from the budget. So, but for this 1 cedi, would have had to take 10 billion from the budget. And statutory payments like Get Fund and all of those payments would have suffered. And so in economics, you don't have a shortcut. So kindly allow us. We're doing all the necessary work, and we believe that as we go forward, we'll make more gains, and we'll pass that gains to Ghanaians.
Okay.
This government has been very transparent.
You said earlier that this levy is not going to pay legacy debts, but it's going to use to manage our fuel needs. The minister said that this bill was pushed under a certificate of urgency because there's a total indebtedness of $3.1 billion as of March 2025. So is this going to help us pay that $3.1 billion, or is just going to go into
if
fuel?
You read the bill very well, the bill states categorically that this is to help us procure critical fuel.
Okay.
And that is liquid fuel.
Okay.
We are renegotiating with all the IPPs. The 3 billion is for power producers alone.
Okay.
Not the energy sector debt.
Now on
so
liquid,
we are renegotiating with power producers.
Okay.
And then we are working with them to see how we can agree on a payments plan. Already we paid some of them some money.
Now on the liquid fuel, can you give us some clarification? We know that all the thermal plants now, possibly with the exception of AXA, run on gas, and they can go to LCO or any other fuel. In the 2025 projections of the Energy Commission, they write that in 2025, natural gas will remain the predominant fuel for thermal facilities. In fact, they project that thermal will be 97% of the fuel we need, and that we need a total of $1.2 billion as a total fuel expenditure, with thermal taking 1.217. So it looks as though, and if you look at the tariff mix, gas has been taken care of in the tariff mix, with PURC actually agreeing a 15 Ghana cedi to the dollar exchange rate. Now we are making gains on the exchange rate. So with that 15 Ghana cedis to the dollar approved by PURC in the tariff, it should actually give you some windfall in the energy sector. That's number one. Number two, Energy Commission also is suggesting that gas is 97%. So when you talk about liquid fuel like LCO, HFO, is going to be a small percentage of the fuel we need. Does this still warrant us to charge Ghanaians an extra 500 million USD every year on fuel?
Thank you very, very much. And that even underscores how the previous administration engaged in their planning. Totally off plan. Totally off plan. Because the results or the outcomes tells you that projection was completely wrong. And so we had to remodel. AXA runs on liquid fuel. Sand Power runs on liquid fuel. Asokli runs on liquid fuel. KTPP runs on liquid fuel. So how they came by that projection, completely off. And that is why we had to take this emergency measure. The planning was not done properly. The projections were not done properly. And when they published it, some of us had cause to criticize that publication. And now we are dealing with the outcomes, which shows that what they projected completely wrong. Because your peak demand has now hit 4,300. How do you fuel those plants? And where would that gas come from? And this is the same government that has not even added 1 kilometer of pipeline with Ghana Gas. No additional gas processing plant apart from what they inherited from us. And so yes, all these plants are dual fuel plants. But where do you take the gas? And bear in mind, we're exhausting all our gas consumption, particularly in the west, and pushing some through the rivers flow. And the outcomes are there. I'll show it to you. I'll send you the full record. But the truth is that the liquid fuels are expensive. And that's why I said that.
So we cannot work with the 2025 Energy Commission projections on electricity in Ghana, based on what you're saying. So based on what you're saying, we should throw away the 2025 outlook by Energy Commission on electricity in Ghana.
We've changed it.
Now,
it's not realistic.
Now, let me ask you this question. I know you're also the alternate finance minister. So did the finance people in this government, were you aware of the scale of the energy sector debt and the need for this levy only recently? Because 3 months ago, you put out a budget, and you are saying that when you took over, you realized that the whole system was a mess. And why didn't you put this in the budget from the onset? You put out a budget and gave us a sense that
around 16 cedi. And a sensitive government will not slap a tax when fuel is 16 cedi.
Did you not believe in your macroeconomic strategies to bring down the exchange rate and all those things to be able to put this in the budget earlier? You did not believe in your earlier projections?
No, you couldn't have imposed that tax around that time when fuel was still very high. And so you needed to work to bring fuel down to this level and share the gains with Ghanaians. At that time, if we had increased it, you can imagine the impact on Ghanaians. But today, the net effect is that you are still having a reduction of 3 cedi on a liter of fuel. It's better to do it today than to do it yesterday when it would have eroded your income. Today, your purchasing power has increased because of a reduction in the value of the dollar. Your purchasing power has increased because of a reduction in fuel price. And so even with this 1 cedi, the purchasing power has not eroded,
Right.
even as we
Okay.
sympathize with Ghanaians.
I'd like you to stay with us, Mr. Jinapal, just for an extra moment, because we're joined by Ben Boache of ASEP. He, of course, is an industry watcher. Ben, what a pleasure. Good morning.
Good morning, Kojo.
Right. So,
Good morning to Honorable.
yeah, how is ASEP reacting to this levy?
Yeah, I'm actually out of town, so I just heard the news that it's come through Parliament and it's been passed. My immediate reaction was that, I mean, we all know the problems in the energy sector problem, but I'm not sure a 1 cedi imposition on the consumer at this point really is an effective way of addressing the problem. I heard the minister say that we've made some gains. Of course, we've seen a reduction in cedi terms, but the fact that this is essentially on the account of the appreciation of the cedi, it tells you that the value of the currency is still the same. So it's not a gain to the consumer unless you are trading in currencies. The cedi has appreciated, so its value remains the same. In fact, it's even the sector that gains, because if you are paying your dollar bills and you still keep those cedis and the cedi has appreciated that extent, what it means is that what you could do with the 98 pesos that we were collecting in the past regime or in the past window, you could actually do more with that. And it's the same even with the electricity tariff that we are collecting. So there is that gain at that side. But to slap an additional 1 cedi on the consumer, I thought was really on the high side. If you model that, essentially what you're doing is that for every time you fill your car, for just supporting the energy sector, you are paying almost 200 cedis, all right, for the inefficiencies that we keep paying for years. And that, for me, I think is a bit of a load on the consumer. And particularly if you look at businesses that have fleets, that have a lot of cars, that would have to cough several hundreds of thousands in a month to be able to accommodate this adjustment. It's not going to be an easy relief. And people are still struggling to calibrate this whole cedi appreciation into their scheme of things. For the average person on the street, I mean, you see the cedi drop from 16 to about 10, which can be celebrated. But there are other people who are still struggling to calibrate that because of the trade regime that they operate. So I thought that we would have been patient to actually model how these things, affect everybody in the space and not rush into taking this. In any case, this is just one of the problems in the energy sector. I mean, if you're getting about 5 billion from this new imposition, 5 billion cedis, it's good money. It's not going to address the problem of the energy sector in totality. So a lot more work is required to be done. That's why I was thinking that we'll do a more surgical introspection of the problems of the energy sector, try to fix them. I mean, for example, if you look at how we have procured liquid fuels over the years, since it was taken away from VRA close to a decade ago, we used to do competitive tendering for liquid fuel. Now, because we are always buying on the spot, the margin, for the suppliers for buying on the spot and through, on the spot purchases is almost $40, 35, 37 dollars on a barrel, for the premium that we are paying. We can deal with that by planning effectively and efficiently to eliminate those kind of high payments on the fuel, and that brings down the cost of the liquid fuels that are required to actually generate electricity. Fuel is part of the tariff. When you are buying liquid fuel, what that means is that you plan to use gas to generate power. The gas is somewhat not available, and therefore you have to buy liquid. So it's an adjustment for the addition. It's not as if there is no fuel in the tariff. So the difference between the gas and the liquid is the conversation that we want to have here. But the bigger problem is the inability to recover the money from the electricity sector. And we've seen recurrently, the liberty to go to petroleum, downstream petroleum, where we feel it's easy to tax. So if we create inefficiencies in the power sector, we just go to the petroleum sector and slap tax on it. So cumulatively, by the end of this month and the imposition of this, we will be looking at slapping over 15 billion of cedis on petroleum sector, just to be able to manage the power sector. And as I indicated, that is still not enough if we don't aggressively address. And I appreciate the effort that the minister has made since he assumed the reins to actually try and fix the energy sector problem, which some progress have actually been made. But we need to be much more surgical and aggressive in addressing the inefficiency. We talked about Haptel's contract, where ECG was operating his own app, and then this app is hived to a private sector, and they are making so much money for some job that ECG was doing on his own, and nothing is being done to actually fix those problems and bring back the money into the sector and pay for more the liabilities and the bills in the space. We've seen companies processing cables of ECG, melting them essentially into billets and shipping them back out of the country. We need action. Those who are benefiting from these inefficiencies, and I keep saying that these inefficiencies, they are not sitting anywhere. They are seeping into pockets. Right. People are benefiting from the inefficiencies that we see in the sector. And we have to quickly address those inefficiencies to create a space for everybody to benefit. And not, if you take petroleum sector, it is the engine actually of the economy. Everybody runs with fuel. It's not a luxury in Ghana to actually own a car, because there are no alternatives. You simply have to buy petroleum products to be able to move. You remember when petroleum prices went to $100 per barrel, people were parking. You go and walk along the motorway and you see cars parked because they couldn't run, and they were chasing trotros to be able to go to work. So it tells you how much of a value these petroleum products are to the average consumer. We need to be able to protect that and protect the broader economy.
Okay. If you just joined us, we're talking about the imposition of a 1 cedi per on fuel. This is to support the energy sector and for them to be able to buy fuel to keep the lights on. We're talking with Ben Boakye, who you just heard. We have the Minister for Energy himself, John Jinapor, on the line. We also have Professor Godfred Bokbin. Mr. Jinapor, having heard Ben Boakye's take on this, he says, well, this is not the solution, and even if it was, it's too little.
Let me commend Ben. He's been very objective, very fair, and very truthful with the situation. And I did also say that this 1 cedi is not the only solution to the energy sector problem. And I perfectly agree with him. We must bring about efficiency in the sector. For instance, if a year ECG's budget is 1 billion and they end up spending 8.3 billion, and almost all that 8.3 billion is used to procure cables, which will last them for the next 15 years. When they do not have transformers, you certainly have problems. We are correcting that. We are reversing all those inefficiencies, insisting that there should be value for money. And I agree with him that once we start getting this money, then we can determine the terms. The problem currently is that because we don't have the money readily available, sometimes even when you want to set your own terms in terms of procurement of fuels, it becomes difficult. And so we'll be working with all the stakeholders. And by the end of the year, we would itemize to you the set targets, what we've achieved, and the gains we've made. Because progressively, we must begin to reduce the inefficiency and the debt so that eventually the electricity sector can cater for itself. But Ben would also agree that as we speak, even the capacity charges, or what you call reserve margin, they are not even part of the tariff structure. And so we also want to be sensitive so that in an attempt to make the power sector self-reliant, you do not overburden consumers. IPPs, we want to renegotiate with them again because we believe that where we've gotten to, they should play ball with us so that the economy can move on. It's a process. And so let me agree with my friend Ben. We would work together and continue to make those gains. But this is a situation where we find ourselves, and we're given the challenge that we have. This is the best decision so that as we move forward, we keep reviewing and make the necessary decision.
Kojo, let's give the final word to Prof. Bobkin. Prof.
Yes, Kojo, thank you very much. As I indicated earlier, this is not a solution totally. I recognize the leadership and the measures that government is taking in the energy sector, but I considered that under the current circumstance, given the fiscal space that we don't have, this levy seems to be an appropriate intervention. That yes, we have some windfall gains here. If you look at the reduction in terms of the export price from the baseline to where we are now, we are talking about something in excess of 3 cedis. And if we are not passing on all of that onto the consumer, and the government is taking 1 cedi out of that, yes, we would have wished that they will pass on all of that to consumers. But I think under the circumstance, yes, we can make progress with this. But it's also important then for government to take drastic measures in resolving the more fundamental issues which continue to burden consumers. Without that, you continue to impose these taxes and the debt will build up and all of that. So that is where I come from. So when I say I have a soft side towards this levy, that is where I come from. That what is the low-hanging fruit in the immediate, and also to assure investors of our repayment capacity and all of that. I think that we can make progress. As I indicated earlier, my considered view that this is not a permanent handle. This is a temporary one, and government has to be clear on that in terms of a certain timeline so that people can plan.
Right. I think that's exactly what that is, the last word.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes, but Kojo, final one to the Minister of Energy. Honorable John Jinapo, we need to have an extensive conversation on the energy sector. When are you coming to the studio? Because our listeners have been asking us when you are bringing Honorable John Jinapo. Next week, which day?
Please let me check my calendar and confirm. I don't want to say it on air. And, it will tend to be a disappointment.
If you don't confirm, we will tell ECG to switch off your transformer.
We will certainly follow up with you off air and secure a day next week for our audience to have some time with you in the studio.
Yes,
so we appreciate that so much. Thank you very much. That was, of course, the Minister for Energy, John Jinapo. You also heard from Bembuachi of ASEP and Professor Godfred Bokpin of the University of Ghana School of Business. We thank them all.